What's up? My name is Darryl Williams and welcome back to another episode of Real Estate 101. Alright guys, so today we're going to jump into a little bit of a longer discussion than our normal videos, and we're going to talk about pre-closing possession agreements and what are those, what does that mean? This sounds very complicated. Do I really need to know this information as a real estate agent, or better yet, as a buyer? Yes, you do. And before we do that, please take a moment to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and please share this video. It would mean a lot to me. Pre-closing possession agreements. I did not know what that was until this year, 4 months ago, when I actually had to do this for a buyer. But before I explain why I had to do that for a buyer, let's go into the definition of what a pre-closing possession agreement is. So if you represent a buyer that needs immediate housing and wants possession prior to closing, because the closing is taking way too long for various reasons, which always happens, especially in New York City, if you're buying in a co-op, you might want to consider a pre-closing possession agreement. The agreement is similar to a lease, whereby the parties agree to certain terms, buyer and seller, and conditions of the buyer moving in before the buyer actually purchases the property. As with any agreement, it's important to the agreement to be reduced to writing and signed by both parties. That goes without saying. This should definitely be in writing and not just, hey, can I stay in the apartment before we close? This aids in avoiding misunderstandings later as to what the parties agreed to concerning the possession. Pre-closing possession agreement should disclose the date of the possession. So when am I going to move in before closing? When the actual unit is going to close, the buyer should expect to pay some consideration for the benefit of moving in early. So the buyers are not going to move in for free. They have to pay some sort of prorated rent or what have you. The agreement should prohibit any alterations to the property. So the buyer shouldn't just move in and start painting and doing renovations because it's not their home yet. So this protects the seller in the event the closing does not occur for some reason. The agreement should require the buyer to surrender possession if closing does not occur, and requires the buyer payment of all fees, costs, including attorney's fees, should the buyer fail to vacate when required. If you don't close, you have to move out if you're the buyer, and the pre-closing possession agreement is null and void. That is what a pre-closing possession agreement is, and I'm just gonna kind of give an example so you can get a better understanding of how this actually works in reality. So I had a deal a few months ago. It was a co-op, actually not too far where I live now in Hamilton Heights. My buyer, we've been in contract, she was board approved, which usually, as you stated in my last video, if you watch co-op and condos, what's the difference? After the board approves you, you can close pretty much right away. The bank just needs whatever final paperwork to clear the loan to close. In this case, the bank couldn't because the building's underlying mortgage had come to term and they were refinancing, and the building needed a new commitment letter, which my buyer's bank needed to show proof that the building was not in default of their mortgage. And this was supposed to happen way prior until we closed on the apartment, but it did not. They said it's gonna be in a month. A month came and we still couldn't close. My buyer was like, I'm gonna pull out of this deal. Like, it's taking way too long. I'm gonna go look at apartments to rent. And I was like, what can we do? Is like, maybe ask the seller if we can rent the apartment now before I move in. I was like, I'm not sure if that's gonna happen. That's what I said in my head, but I was like, sure, I will ask it. And it took us about a week before I got through the seller's agent to get back to me regarding if my buyer can move in prior to closing, because it doesn't look like we're closing anytime soon. And if this doesn't happen for her, my buyer's gonna back out. We finally got through and the seller agreed, and now the attorneys, we leave it up to the attorneys to talk and work out the terms of the agreement. I spoke with my buyer still, and buyer agreed to pay a prorated monthly maintenance fee. Co-ops have monthly maintenance fees, which include your real estate taxes and any fees to take care of the common areas of the building, right? So my buyer's not gonna pay rent, you know, to move in to an apartment that she's gonna own soon, nor is she gonna pay a mortgage because, well, she hasn't closed on the property yet. However, we agreed that she will pay a prorated rent per day of the monthly maintenance. I think it was something like $50 or something a day until closing time. And that was obviously, I was put in writing. They both agreed, and my buyer went and got the keys from the doorman the next day once that was signed. And that was my first time executing a pre-closing possession agreement. It can be a little tricky. The seller wanted more money. I was like, heck no, my buyer's not paying you any more money. This it's taking way too long. I have to talk my buyer into not backing out and renting an apartment so that we can get this deal done. So you have to accept the prorated amount of the maintenance until closing. And that's exactly what happened. So this is very important for you to know as a real estate agent. If you're a newbie, this may come up. This came up in my second year of doing real estate sales, and I had no idea what this was. I had to Google it to figure out what this was. I'm like, okay, this is something that we can do. And I'm glad I experienced it this early in my career. Because if I hit a snag, I know next time that this is a possibility. And you as a buyer should know what is possible for you. If you need to move out immediately and closing is taking long, call your real estate agent and say, like, hey, I want to do a pre-closing possession agreement. Let's talk to the seller because I need to move out of my apartment like now. So that is a pre-closing possession agreement. It's a high-level tool. You might not use this in your first or even second year as a real estate agent, but it's good to know and have that in your toolbox in case you do need to use this in whatever scenario that may occur. All right, so thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.